Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundless success to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Happily Never After show. I'm your host, Kate Mollison. This week, I'm here with a financial recovery coach, Shell Sawyer. Welcome to the show, Shell. Can't even get the
Thank
words
you,
out
Kate.
today.
I know Shell Sawyer, right? Two S's right in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Haven't
hard.
had enough coffee yet, apparently. Shell Sawyer.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kate,
Yeah,
as
thanks for
well.
being here. So, I know that you specialize in finances for divorced women specifically, right?
Yeah, it's
But
for divorce specifically. Yes.
okay, but your forte is divorced women.
Yeah, I would say, I'm a personal divorce guide. I'm also a mediator and a financial recovery coach. So that personal divorce guide piece, I would say, is mostly women that I work with, right? That want help with their finances, making good decisions in their divorce. So yes, I do work with some men, but it's more women that come to me for help.
Yeah. And you work with people both who are in that oh my God, I've been surprised by someone sprung a divorce on me, and
Yeah.
the amicable, mutual, hey, we are making the decision to separate and there's a runway. You work with both of
Right.
those types of strategies, right?
Yes. And I would even say like that amicable, like we want to do what's best for our family, right?
Mm.
That's basically what they're trying to do. And the majority of what divorce is all about your finances.
Yeah. People don't realize that marriage is a legal contract, right? Yes,
I
there's the love
know.
and the emotion to it, but in order to undo the legal contract of marriage, there's the legal process of divorce. And that is such a untangling of things,
Yeah.
right?
I I love that you said untangling because I always describe that to my clients. It's almost like they have this like web that they've tangled
Yeah.
together, and now we're trying to like untangle that web and have them go as their own separate way, right? Their own separate spiders.
Yeah. Well, I think that the experience of widowhood very closely mirrors, if not parallels in some ways, the experience of divorcee did hood dumb. I don't know, divorcee.
I think you just made up a new name. I like that.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that
Yeah.
that experience as the statistical non-primary breadwinner.
Yeah.
Um, how do you reclaim your finances? How do you find clarity in the chaos?
Yeah.
How do you put your feet back on the ground? So let's
Yeah.
talk
It
about some of those strategies. What do you say?
Yeah. So I think, everyone is kind of going through grief when they're getting divorced, right?
Yeah.
They don't realize that that's what it is, but they are grieving the loss. And it might not even be the loss of someone. It could be, right? But it's also a loss of like your future and what you thought that looked like.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I try to help them like give themselves a little bit of grace first, right? You're grieving. You have to get through this process. Hopefully it'll be better on the other side, right? It usually is a little brighter, right? But you have to get there.
Mm.
So take little baby steps. Some days it might be taking a moment in time, right, to move yourself forward, but do something every day that helps you get just a little bit better and a little bit more along that path
Mm.
until they get over that doorstep. And
Yeah.
sometimes
So
it
like a little
takes time.
self-care, right? Like a little
Yeah,
self-healing and a
self-care.
little self-parenting because this
Yeah,
stuff's hard.
yeah, yeah. It's hard. And having good support by your side is so important, right? And even if it like if you don't feel like you have the support, maybe you don't have like the friendships in the town that you're living in, or
Mm.
you know, having professionals by your side that can help you kind of move yourself forward, whether that's a therapist, whether that's a divorce coach like myself. I'm also a certified divorce financial analyst, right? So it's all about the money and the emotions of this, right? It can be very emotional. And what you want to stay away from is making decisions that are emotional.
Yeah, and that's one of the
Yeah.
worst pieces of advice that's out there, right? Is that don't make any big decisions for the first year. And you are
Well, you have
sometimes,
to.
especially like, yeah, in my
Yeah.
situation, I was
Yeah.
throttled into a rabbit hole of decision junctures. And there was
Yeah.
no day that didn't go by. I couldn't escape making a decision, right? So that's the worst
So
advice.
true.
And a
Yeah,
lot of
it
the
is because you
financial
have to do it.
people, yeah, and a
Yeah.
lot of the financial people don't want to talk to you if you don't have like, a certain amount of money in liquidity or in assets. And
Uh,
it's like you're literally at the
mhm.
crux of your whole life crumbling. And you just need
Right.
answers, right? So,
Yeah.
but a lot of those
And to
same
find those
strategies,
answers.
right? Like, how do you find those
Yeah.
answers? So, a lot of the same
Yeah.
strategies that would have been helpful to me are things that you help people who are going through a similar situation, right? So,
So true. So
right? Like,
true.
so what
Yeah,
are
there's so
some of
many
those
synergies there.
strategies? What are some of the things that you coach people through when you say financial analyst or
Yeah.
strategist? Like, what does that
Yeah.
mean?
Yes. That means finding clarity in your finances, right?
Mm, don't we all
There,
need that?
so yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's looking at what do you need in your next chapter, right? There's a lot of details that, and I want to make this distinction, right? Most people, when they are going through divorce, say, I'm going to go get an attorney, right? Probably hire the first attorney that they got that was a referral from a friend. The attorneys play really great roles in the divorce process, but they're not there to help you find clarity, figure out what you need,
Mm,
look at your finances and make sure you're going to be okay in the next chapter and help you make good decisions, right? They're
yeah.
more there to help you get what you want and help you negotiate, right? Be your advocate for you. So
Mm,
having somebody that is going to be by your side, helping you kind of look at your finances. Okay, what is the next chapter going to look like? Am I going to be, maybe you're thinking about keeping the marital home. Can you afford that? Do you understand all the intricacies that go into keeping that
mm.
home, like repairs and maintenance, right? That you don't think about.
It's so
You
crazy
know,
that you say that. So, episode
yeah.
one of this season, I interviewed my friend Erin Anderson, real estate agent, and we talked about like that was the situation I had. I had a marital home that I couldn't afford to keep, and I didn't
Mm.
know what to do. And it literally fell onto having a market analysis to figure out we were upside down in valuation. And but
Oh,
like if I had had someone
yeah,
maybe to
that
help me
happens.
look at the finances and not just go, okay, that's the first answer. And to be
Yeah,
clear, Aaron's not the one that gave me that advice on the house, but we talked about that situation and what
that
other
happens.
options I potentially could have had. But that it's the
Mm.
lack of access to information, right? So that's also part of what
Right.
you do is create information and education. You
Yeah.
provide more than just strategy that you implement. You really take people along for the ride and make sure they can
Yeah.
leave the proverbial nest, right? And that
Yeah.
that is so
Navigate
important
that
in
whole
grief,
situation.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Having so I always say I hold their hand during the
Mm,
process, right? And that's what I'm doing. Having somebody to help navigate those troubled waters, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah. I I know that when I was going through my own divorce, right, I felt like I was in a fog because it wasn't
Mm,
something that I wanted and I was facing this. So you had mentioned that before, and that's why I wanted to kind of bring it up. I was
yeah.
facing this divorce and I had trouble getting out of bed some days. And I'm sure you can relate to this, right?
Oh, for
Let alone
sure.
sit there and make decisions for my future, right? I'm like, I can't even think right now, right? I can't
Like
sit
picking up an
here and
envelope in the mail, a bill, it feels like it weighs 10,000 pounds some days, right? Like
at
that
least,
just
yeah,
everything is a
yeah,
burden. Yeah,
right. And some days feel a little better, some days don't, right? And
for
sometimes
sure.
it's those days that you wake up in the middle of the night and you're contemplating, like, oh my God, I didn't think about this or I didn't think about that.
Ugh, and then your brain races, and then you turn to an insomniac. Hi, hello, it's me. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you don't
So
have any
that's
spare
hard.
time to think about anything. So when you're done working and you lay down at night and the kids are in bed and the dishes are done, the laundry's put away, and it's like, okay, time for tonight. And your head hits the pillow, and then your brain is like, dollars and
I'm
cents. And you just
tired.
hear that cash register ring. And you think
Mm,
about all of the expenses and the bills and the money and it's a
yeah.
lot. And I'm
And
sure
how are
in
you going to do
divorce,
all of
obviously,
this?
you're not necessarily planning or paying for a funeral, but you're now
Hmm.
like buying, selling multiple properties, you're, potentially buying, selling vehicles, your
Yeah.
retirement
On the
plans and
move.
health insurance benefits, and
Mhm,
everything
mhm.
is so tangled together in
It
ways
is.
that people don't realize. Your finances is so intricately connected to so many other facets of our lives, our marriages, our relationships with our spouses. So how
Yeah.
do we untangle that shell? How do we like pick apart that knot, whether it's
Yeah.
divorce or death or but in that necessary separation
Hmm.
of that nest, how do we do
Right.
that?
It's first looking at what do you own and owe, right? Like looking at your
Mm,
net worth. What do you have? What's there on the table, right? And understand the worth of each of them, right? Um, I run into a lot of women who want to keep the marital home for one reason or another because, they don't want to disrupt the kids or it's maybe their place of refuge, right? But that asset, right, that's something that you own, isn't necessarily as profitable as something like a
mm,
retirement plan, right? It doesn't make money on itself like a
yeah.
retirement plan does, right? So you have to understand that everything isn't created equal. And even though it might
Mm,
look like 50-50 on a piece of paper, right? If you're trying to like take these assets and these liabilities, these things that you own and owe, and you try to split them out and like put them in each of your columns so you each walk away with some good, but you have to understand what are some of the tax consequences that you have here.
mm,
If you are getting say a Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. That's what usually the example I use. Those two items are treated differently when it comes to retirement. So you have to know that one of them you have to pay taxes on, the other one you don't. So just understanding
wild.
those, somebody
Yeah,
might be
like just that
getting
little
a
bit.
better settlement. Yeah, yeah.
And being
So
like the widow
being
component to
educated.
that, yeah, right? It's
Yeah,
education, and we
yeah.
don't
It's
gatekeep.
ancient
The widow
education.
component to that is when you file taxes, you have 2 years where you're qualifying widow. So, like the
Yeah.
first year I filed was still married filing jointly because he died in
Okay.
November. So we filed in
Okay.
January. Then the
Yeah.
next 2 years was qualifying widow. And then the
Hmm.
third year, I'm head of household,
Okay. So what
right?
does
So like
qualifying widow mean? What does that mean?
it, so it's, I'm not head of household because I'm still getting like the probate case was open. There was still like
Oh,
tax implications from his employer. It was like finances need 2 years to, the IRS needs 2 years to catch
yeah.
up on paperwork, is basically what it feels like. I don't know.
Yeah.
If someone out there has a better answer, I would love it. So please comment, email, write me. I want to know. If someone listening can absolutely tell me, that would be great. But as far as I understand it, it's just the IRS. I don't know.
Wow. And how long it takes to kind of
So here's the
weed through
really messed up
everything,
part to
right?
that is I got audited 2 years in a row. Guess which 2 years I got audited?
When you were a widow, when you were a qualified
Qualifying
widow.
widow. And I
Yeah.
learned that a widow is 63% more likely to be audited than anybody else.
Huh.
And so they like overpaid me and then took money back. And
I was just thinking
it was a
there's because
whole
there's so much to
kerfuffle.
it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
There's so much.
lot.
Yeah.
And I totally
Yeah.
like it's a lot. But people don't know.
Yeah.
And if you don't have help and you don't understand like that there's equity in the home or that you need to, you know,
Take capital
reassign
gains on something.
beneficiaries on pensions and
Yes.
insurance
Yeah.
plans and do you have a ULI that has that living benefit that how are you assigning that? What are we doing with these monies in
Yeah.
that untanglement, right?
That's why estate planning is so important, right?
That is a beautiful segue into my next, like you literally must have read my mind. I was going to ask you
Uh-oh.
about your perspective on estate planning and pre-planning from that financial analyst perspective. Like, what are some things you can do to prepare and help create clarity and have a longer runway?
For preparation, yeah, I mean, communication is key when you're talking about finances, right? Know what you do own and owe, first and
Mm,
foremost, right? Before divorce is even on your doorstep, or before, God
yeah.
forbid, somebody
Estate
passes
planning, I think they
away,
call that an
right?
inventory list.
Yeah, yeah, and have open communication about like what you are doing, what are your investments, what does your retirement plans look like? How much are we spending on things? So that when it does knock on your doorstep or it is on your doorstep, right, you have some kind of awareness, right? And then, you might put together a will when you have a family, um, and you're married, right? But afterwards, you need to redo that will, right?
Oh
And the
my gosh, thank you.
beneficiaries.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, thank you.
because one of the things you don't want to happen is, your 401k that you fought really hard for in your divorce and you kept your ex on your as your beneficiary. I mean, those kind of trump any wills anyways, right?
Yeah.
And something happens to you and your ex gets everything, right? Like you'd probably be rolling over
Right?
in your
Especially if there's
grave,
kids
right? Like,
involved and stuff, right?
especially
I
kids
am like,
involved.
preach
Yeah,
because I say this to people all the time. One, you need to have a will. And two, it's
yeah,
not just to set it and forget it, right? Like, you don't
no,
buy a car and never take it for a tune up. You got to change the oil every now and then. You've got to take it
yeah,
out and look underneath the hood, make sure
yeah.
everything's copacetic.
And life insurance is so
Yes.
important. For divorce and, God forbid you lose someone, right? Like life insurance. And so in divorce, I talk about that when we're doing mediation, or I talk about that when I'm working one-on-one with people, because first of all, my background is insurance. I worked in financial services industry for 20 plus years. Let's
Oh,
just leave it at that. So I know a lot about disability insurance, life insurance, and the importance of it, right? And divorce, if something happens to you after you get divorced, that ex-spouse is responsible for everything to do with the children, right?
mm,
From, feeding them, right? And but affording them. It's going to
yeah.
fall right on their shoulders, right? And I'm sure that's true Well, in any situation like this, right? I'm sure
Right,
you
right.
experience that too. If you don't
Oh,
have
for
a life
sure.
insurance policy, even if it's a small one, to help take care of their college education, right? So important. Very
Yeah, absolutely.
valuable.
I say at bare
Mhm.
minimum, each partner should have a policy equal the value of the house
Hmm, that's a good way to look at it.
because
Yeah.
then they each put in, say it walks away, they each put in half and walk away with half. So it's kind of like
Hmm.
a nest egg, so to speak.
Yeah. And I would say for divorce, they should each have something that's equivalent to the kids going to college,
Mm.
right? Um, so the other person doesn't have to worry about that, right?
Yeah.
And college is very expensive and
I
it
was gonna say there's also
ranges,
college
right?
saving plans that they could have separate and then they could
They could
jointly put money into,
they
but they
could
could
do
use
that.
the life insurance.
Yeah, but if
Yeah.
something happens to them, they're not putting into the 529 plan again,
But
you
that's what it's
know?
called, the five. Yeah,
That
yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
yeah,
That's what the life
yeah.
insurance policy in
Is
trust is
your
for, right?
yeah, yeah,
There we
exactly.
go. See,
Yeah.
look at
And
us,
naming each
estate
other as the
planning 101.
beneficiary. Right. There's so much more to estate planning, but that's
Oh,
just
for
like,
sure.
and I always like tell people it's really important, right? I have somebody that's a referral that I give out all the time, but whether they take me up on it or not, you know, you can only say, hey, I think that you guys should have, you know, redo your wills, get a trust in place, you
Yeah.
know,
But I
change
love
your
that you speak
beneficiaries.
from a place of like empathy and personal experience, right? Like I was looking
Yeah.
at your website before we started chatting, and I love the just calming energy that
Yeah,
your site
thank
gives
you.
off and the vibe that you're creating. You really do get
Thank
the
you.
energy of creating calm and creating clarity. And that characteristic is so important when you're dealing with the confusion and frustration of finances in post
Yeah,
loss, right? So, what are some
right.
of those strategies that you help people put in place to create calm, to create clarity, right? Like we talked about the inventory list, but how do
Hmm.
we create that peace, that financial literacy and self-efficacy, you know?
Yeah. So I do use software that I think provides a lot of clarity when we're looking at finances.
Mm,
And it's giving people like, I don't have them necessarily put together their own budget. They are doing it, but they don't really understand it. And then I give that to them, and it's in a clear format. And I walk them through what it all looks like, right?
mm,
So I have a lot of people that come to me and they have this fear of their finances, the uncertainty of what's going to happen in the next
yeah.
chapter, right? So I try to give them like some clear and talk to them about it, right? Help them understand and we make decisions together.
Mm,
So leaning on me, but also I'm glad you said that it gives out a clear, presence because that's what I'm striving for is to help
yeah, for
people
sure. It was very like
kind of make,
serene.
yeah, yeah, and build their confidence up, right? That they're going to be okay. And this is how,
And
right?
that support, that feeling of like, I feel like with finances, a lot of the time, there's judgment or perception of
Mm,
judgment if there's
yeah,
no
no
financial
judgment, no.
literacy or, right? Like if you don't have enough
Yeah,
money or you aren't great with money, if you have debt, people who work in finances or banking and people who have money problems imposed upon or otherwise, there's always a
yeah.
disconnect, I feel like. And
Mm,
the environment of resiliency, but support is so necessary. And I wish that more providers and people and professionals would operate from that perspective. So, what
yeah.
advice do you have for people who work with people in loss? Like, how can they better foster that type of environment in their own work?
I love that. I love that you said like no judgment too, because that's like
Yeah,
that, that's what I want to instill, right? Is there is no judgment here. Nobody learns finances, right? Well, we sometimes we learn through living, right? We maybe learn through seeing our parents do finances and or we learn like from
Yeah, we're
experience, right?
experiential creatures. Like it's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I try to take that as like, just because I have that expertise doesn't mean everybody does, right? I went to
Mm.
school for this. I like have a background in it. This was like my thing from the get-go. But people, but I would say
You're a
others need to
finance girly,
understand.
right?
I am a finance girl. Like I was born and raised that
So you were always
way.
the banker playing Monopoly? Is that?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Still to this day, the
Oh my gosh,
treasurer
you're
of the
so
activities committee, right?
funny.
Yeah. Um, but not everybody comes from that place, right? And I
Yeah.
just feel so thankful that I can help people through their
Mm.
finances, right? I feel so very thankful. It's a gift that I feel I can give to others. And I wish other people saw it that way, that they have this gift, right?
Mm.
That they can help other people and walk alongside them and help them with their finances, right? Um, I don't think everybody has compassion, so or empathy like you were talking about, but if they just
Yeah.
take a step back and kind of look at it like it's not just about making money. It, it's
Mm.
about the people you are working with,
Sure.
and not
Oh, I
the
love
income and
that.
cost. Don't look at them like they're just another like widget. Um, do something to help them, right?
Yeah, right. Like it costs
Yeah,
nothing to be kind. I say
it
that
doesn't.
all the time. It costs
I love
absolutely
that.
nothing to be
It
kind.
doesn't.
Just slow down and look at it from another perspective and try to
Don't we all need to
empathize.
do that
Right?
nowadays
Like
so much,
slow
right?
down a little
Everything is go,
bit.
go, go. Yeah, take the time. See where the other person's coming from. We all need
I
to do
love
that a
that.
little more. Hold the
Right? Oh,
door.
I'm so on board with this. I love this movement.
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
advice do you
Be
have
kind.
for the people in loss, the ones who are maybe floundering, unexpectedly
Mhm.
finding themselves somewhere? How do they start to learn to tread water?
Yeah, slowly. A lot of self-care. It's hard at first. I was that person. Like I had said, I didn't really want to get divorced.
Mm,
And it was so hard for me to like move forward. And I think at first I was like, I'm going to show him, that I'm going to be like financially independent and I'm going to
mm.
be fine by myself, which is was good because in the end, I mean, he didn't really care, but I did. And I realized that I could do it, right? So, I
Yeah.
mean, I think a lot of people say like, think positively. That's hard, you know?
Oh my
Uh,
gosh, it's the worst advice. I hate that. It's
it
like
is.
saying, don't look down. Okay.
Okay, well, that's the first thing I'm going to do is look down, right? And the first thing I'm going to do is like speak negatively about myself and about the
Yeah.
situation,
Yep.
right? But
Like, oh, thanks.
find
Why
somebody
didn't
that can,
I think of that?
yeah, right. Find somebody that can help you look forward to something, right? Start doing things that make you happy.
Mm.
What is that? But find that, right?
And
Um,
just get
and,
out,
and
right?
it's
Like, just
just
go
get
be
out.
with people. And that's
Yeah,
hard. And some days, like
yeah,
I'll say from experience, and I'm sure you do too, don't always have the bandwidth to
no.
people, right? Like
Hmm.
post loss, post that shift, your
Yeah.
bandwidth for
Sometimes I still
people.
don't have the bandwidth for that.
Right. So like totally
Yeah,
okay to take a day and be introverted, but go out and be with people. Go
yeah,
take a class or shop the farmer's market or join
yeah.
a women's
Or
networking group or
yeah.
like there's
Or
lots of
yeah. Or find
avenues
people that are in your situation too, right? In the
because I
same
always say
situation.
we say that it takes a village to raise a child, right? But the same
Yeah,
philosophy applies in grief is it takes a
it
community to support in grief.
does.
And
It
we
does.
don't really as a culture have that ingrained in us, right? So
No.
how do we start to foster that type of environment? How do we
Yeah.
create clarity for ourselves and create connection and clarity for others? And that sounds a lot like what your business model is and what your philosophy is. You really
Yeah.
married that like financial education with support, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I love that you use the word married because I always do that too. And then I'm like, oh,
I don't mean to. Oh, that's funny. I didn't even realize. Ha ha ha.
that's why I
That's
laughed.
funny.
That was the only reason why I laughed.
I was like, why?
I
Well, I know
always
my
say that and
network
then I laugh
connection
at
is
myself.
weird, and so maybe like I thought I was lagging and made a funny face or something. And so, but no, good. I made a funny little joke and I didn't even mean to. Even better.
Yeah.
Well, we are just about at
I
the
think
end of
that
our
is good.
time
Yeah.
together, but I do want to ask you the same question I've asked everybody this season. If you could give one piece of advice to the listeners, what would you say?
Know your finances. Understand your finances. It's never too late to start, even though I think some people have anxiety over their finances, right? Or they don't like them because it's numbers and it's like tells
Yeah.
you a story, right? But the you can learn if you want to get educated. I'd be happy to help. And I have no judgment, but I think everybody has to start someplace.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So where can people find you?
My website it's kind of long. It's www.findingstrengthwithshell.
I love it.
Yeah,
Because it really
that's
is about finding that strength, right? Like,
yeah. When I first started, this is what I was like, oh, finding strength with Shell. That sounds like catchy, and that's really what I want people to do is find the strength to move forward, and I'm going to help them with that. So, yep,
because that's
that's
what
it.
it takes to get through the chaos that
Mhm.
people don't really understand is there waiting for them, whether it
Right.
be death, divorce, because even in, a foreseen death, there's an untangling that has to
Yeah.
happen.
Mhm.
So I could go on all day, but I want to thank
you.
everyone out there for listening for this week's episode. I encourage everyone to go back and listen to the previous episodes. We can be found on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio. And this has been the Happily Never After show. Until next time, with grief and gratitude, I'm your host, Kate Mollison.
You've been listening to Happily Never After, part of the Xvadio podcast network. You can catch every episode of Happily Never After, as well as the rest of the network at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.